I'm going to shift gears just a little bit, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about practical applications of AI. My research over the last couple of years has been how AI is beginning to impact video storytelling. And so I've looked at a lot of different things. And today I want to talk about image generation, specifically video image generation, and what's taking place. I'm going to talk about three things overall. What's in current use. A lot of you are going to be familiar with it. Talk a little bit about generative video tools, a lot of things that you can already access, and talk about the shortcomings, but really talk about what's likely to happen in the next 6 months. So let's talk a little bit about what's currently in active use. So Adobe is where I spend a lot of my time. I'm in Resolve, I'm in some of the other tools, but I'm going to concentrate on Adobe's suite of tools simply because they all kind of fit together and it gives you an idea of this sort of global approach to things. One of the tools that I've used for probably the last 6-8 months extensively is an AI tool in After Effects called RotoBrush. And what they do is they'll take a frame and break it into segments and identify elements that are within that segment, and then it'll cut it out and move it over time. It's a very quick way to do what's called creating maps or traveling maps, and it's an incredibly powerful tool. The other tool that I guess almost all of you have probably played with is some form of generative AI within images to do outpainting, expand an image, repair things. Firefly is their model, and it's deeply woven within the Photoshop suite and is incredibly helpful. There is a tool that a lot of folks are not aware of, but if you're doing any sort of media production, whether it's video or audio, there's a tool you can access on the web called Podcast. I didn't name it, but what it does is it cleans up audio, and it does a phenomenal job. So here's an example.
But yeah, this booth is so broken down, it's you're sitting in a hole. It's like, please, sir, can I have some more? But yeah, this booth is so broken down, you're sitting in a hole. It's like, please, sir, can I have some more?
So I'm in a diner with all sorts of ambient noise. Depending upon how far off mic the subject is, they can begin to sound a little metallic and cartoony, but you can heal a multitude of sins. The other thing that almost all of the applications have, not just Adobe and Resolve, is the ability to edit video the way you would edit word processing, where it uses a speech-to-text engine, transcribes all of your media. It then comes up in paragraphs, and you start moving things around the way you would in a word processor. And all of those edits that are text-based are populated in the sequence. And so for a lot of folks, this becomes a far more intuitive way to do it. So these are tools that have been out probably between 3 to 9 months and are in wide use all across the world. The area that's just starting to come is video generation. Being able to use these tools to generate video. And there are a number of reasons why this is helpful in media production. One of them is you tend to be missing shots. You may have gone out and you thought you captured everything and you have parts that are missing. And so when we're in production, we're often looking to fill in things that we need to tell a complete story. The thing is that these shots that you put in, they need to appear as if they're part of the scene. They can't stick out. They need to be transparent. The viewer shouldn't see it as a synthetic source. So certainly there are all kinds of issues around interleaving synthetic content with genuine content. And so I'm not really going to talk about all of the ethical things because we could be here for about 4 hours. Really what I want to concentrate on is what's happening right now so you can kind of begin, A, form your own opinions, but B, moreover, be able to recognize what you are going to see constantly. I use this all the time. This is using AI to create mattes, static elements that are then placed over motion video to give the idea that all of these elements fit together. And this is just outpainting and inpainting in Photoshop. And this idea of creating mats is not new. This is something that filmmakers have done for 100 years, where you paint it and you shoot your film through a piece of glass. The only difference is instead of having an artist paint it, we're now having AI build these environments, which we are then using to create these mats. Well, as most of you know, the way these tools work is you start with random noise, and then you have an adversarial network. The machine creates something that thinks it looks like a mouse. Differentiator looks at it and goes, no, that's not really a mouse. And then it goes back and does it, and it iterates over and over again until it learns how to draw an object. And this process works exceptionally well for still images. It has traditionally not worked well for moving images. And the reason why is moving images are actually a sequence of coherent still images that play over time. 24 every second, 30 every second. And with random image, because of the stochastic nature of image generation, AI traditionally has been limited in its ability to generate the same image with just a nuanced difference. And the consequence of this inability to manage the idea of images over time is you ended up with incredibly random looking videos. So this is where we were about 18 months ago, and as you'll see, it's changed significantly. There are 3 players right now in video generation. Most of these tools are in beta, which means you can access them for free. Runway is behind a paywall, but Hyper and Pika Labs you do have access to, and each has their specific advantages. The similarities between these is they can use either image and or text as part of your prompt. So you can take an image and use it as the first frame of the video that you're generating, and you can combine it with a text prompt. Because they're in beta and this process of generation is expensive, it only generates clips that are about 2 to 4 seconds long. And so I'm going to concentrate on those two and give you an idea of where we are right now, what some of the limitations are. So this is an image I created in DALL-E. I know Bergen doesn't actually look like that, but the idea is how can this tool illustrate and animate this scene? So I ran it through a couple of different tools, and you'll see that it is able to take that initial still image and begin to give it motion and action. The streets are wet, and you can see people walking on the side. So for something that is not photorealistic, you can get away with it. A more likely scenario is when you need something that looks like full motion video. In this case, I've got a building and the photograph is vertical, which I need to put in a 16:9 environment. So that means I have to fabricate what's on either side of the building, and then I want to animate that building so it appears lifelike. So when I started in Pika, it looks really cartoony and eventually began to get a little bit more fidelity. Hyper started pretty well and then also got better. So you're beginning to see that these vertical buildings they're building elements around it. And you can start seeing how having these tools in editing can solve a problem. And these 2 shots are actually from a project I worked on about the largest mass timber buildings in the world. And there's no B-roll footage of these buildings. So I needed to create shots of these buildings. So fairly simple environment, it becomes far more problematic when you're in a very complex environment, because these tools have a really difficult time managing multiple things in motion at the same time. So you'll see that there's all sorts of deformation that happens on the side. This guy walking, in the second shot, you'll see it has problems dealing with walking. It's really having a difficult time managing all of these elements because just the physics of it. It also has challenges in dealing with dynamic motion. So here we've got a still frame of a skier coming over a hill, and I want a shot of her coming over the hill. And it doesn't necessarily understand what's supposed to happen. What's interesting is the snow and the wind on the gate are pretty good, but it doesn't understand the skier. And this actually is a friend of mine who races World Cup, and I haven't told Jackie I did this to her photo. But it also currently struggles with with people. I took this photo and modified it in AI, and I wanted him looking at the rapture and to see how it would. So it just moves his lips, and then they don't necessarily understand these are bodies going up. It really is struggling trying to understand, even though I gave it a very specific prompt. It also has a propensity to kick out hallucinations that are really interesting. And Jave, who's coming up next, Jave and I actually really love the hallucinations because it's an interesting sort of example of AI trying to come up with creative solutions. And this is my favorite bout of hallucinations. I told somebody I needed to run to catch the bus, and instead it came out I needed to run to catch the bola. So I did a drawing for her of a woman trying to catch a bus chased by a cinnamon roll, and it did not understand it at all. The first one, she's just moving her lips, but now we're on acid. So you can see that these tools are, shall we say, somewhat problematic. And in media production, we need something we can rely on, and we need something that we can generate predictable results. So there's a number of things that are going to change here, actually probably within the next month and a half. First of all, let's talk a little bit about what's coming on the near horizon. I'm sure we already have seen Sora, and I want to talk a little bit about Sora and what it represents. So Sora is able to generate up to a minute-long, high-quality synthetic video that has all of the physics that make sense and incredibly coherent video images. And they are often lifelike, and they are really profound. And it is incredible what you can begin to fabricate. Although, while you look at these images at first glance, as you'll see, there are inherent problems. But I look at something like this. If I had to do this composite, I would be looking at probably 2 to 3 days to build this in After Effects. And here, it was built in 5 minutes. This gives you an idea how in 18 months, how far we've traveled, that this idea of challenges with temporal coherence problems have really been solved significantly. But it's not at all perfect. Sora is in what's called red teaming right now. That means people are trying to break it before it gets released to figure out how it can be misused. So there are a few researchers, a couple of filmmakers, and OpenAI is acutely aware the potential for misuse with this is significant. But let me talk about some of the things that you may not notice. And again, you'll notice it has problems with motion, how things move, how things propel. AI has always had problems with hands, and it continues to have those sorts of challenges. Large, complex scenes tends to create interesting anomalies like half a horse. And it also has some problems with physics in terms of how things move. And finally, this is my favorite one. Sometimes it just doesn't understand what something is and how it's supposed to move. And so you end up with all of these really strange anomalies. So I'm just going to wrap up here real fast with how these parts fit together and why I think it's significant for all of us. Adobe, even today, announced Firefly 3 and how it's being implemented in their suite of tools. They talked about these tools last week at NAB, but they're rolling out some new stuff today. But this is in Premiere and will be released probably within the next month and a half. And it is significant because you can identify what you want to change, add a prompt, and not only does it generate it, it tracks it in space so that as the camera moves, it stays. It's also able to do object removal, similar to what you saw in like my shot going up the stairs, being able to track. You'll notice though that none of these things are moving. It's not animating the hands on the watch, none of those sorts of things. But they're able to extend shots. You need that shot to be 2 seconds longer. It'll fabricate an additional 2 seconds of the shot. It'll also leverage all the tools we've talked about. So here it's using Pika. It's able to leverage Sora and also Runway. So it's using third-party generative tools within it. And what this means is that this content is going to be woven in everything you see. This is going to be a common tool. So Adobe's aware that folks need to understand what's synthetic and what's genuine. Whether it's going to be successful or not, they're embedding in the metadata watermarking of anything that has generative elements in it. And this is already the case with anything where you use generative AI in Photoshop, that watermark is embedded in. Can it be scraped off? Probably. So anyway, that's all I wanted to give you an idea was just where we're going and how these tools are going to impact how we work and what we see. Thank you very much.